every morning. Before the world reaches for you, you must reach for yourself. Not with comfort, not with hope, but with truth. Because the first voice you hear in the morning will shape the man you become for the rest of the day. Most people wake up and surrender immediately. They check their phone, absorb noise, and allow the world to program their mind before they have even stood up. Weak men wake up reactive. Powerful men wake up intentional. Niccolò Machiavelli understood something most people will never grasp. Power does not begin in armies, wealth, or influence. Power begins in the mind that speaks to itself before the world does. The man who controls his inner voice controls his destiny. That is why every morning must begin with a ritual. 5 brutal truths you repeat to yourself before stepping into the battlefield of the day. Not motivational lies, but weapons. Because the world does not reward kindness, it rewards awareness, discipline, and control. These 5 sentences will harden your mind, sharpen your instincts, and make you psychologically untouchable. By the end of this video, you will not wake up the same way again. But first, I want to know who is truly listening. Comment this phrase below: I command my mind before the world commands me. Type it, mean it, own it. Because in the next section, we begin with the first truth, the sentence that separates rulers from followers. And once you understand it, you will never wake up weak again. Thing number 1, no one is coming. Every morning you must begin with a sentence most people are too afraid to say out loud. No one is coming. No savior, no rescue, no sudden moment where the world finally recognizes your potential and decides to reward you for existing. The brutal truth is that life does not move for the passive. It moves for the prepared, the disciplined, and the relentless. Machiavelli understood this centuries ago. He knew that fortune does not favor the hopeful, it favors the bold. Weak men wake up believing someone will help them carry their burdens. Strong men wake up knowing the burden is theirs alone. And the moment you accept that reality, something powerful happens inside you. You stop waiting for approval, waiting for support, waiting for the right moment. Instead, you begin to act. You begin to build strength in silence. You sharpen your mind, control your habits, and develop the kind of discipline that does not need applause. Because when a man truly understands that no one is coming to save him, he stops negotiating with his excuses. He stops blaming circumstances. He stops playing the victim. And that is when he becomes dangerous. Not loud, not arrogant, dangerous in the quietest way possible. The kind of man who solves problems without announcing them. The kind of man who adapts instead of complains. The kind of man who carries his own weight so completely that the world has no choice but to respect him. Every morning, before your feet touch the ground, repeat it. No one is coming. I am responsible for my life. That sentence is not meant to discourage you. It is meant to free you, because the moment you stop expecting rescue is the moment you start developing power. And power begins with responsibility. If this truth resonates with you, prove it to yourself. Comment below, I rely on my own power. Not because I told you to, but because a man who takes responsibility does not hesitate to declare it. And remember this, the world is full of people waiting for help that will never arrive. Do not be one of them. Thing number 2, the world respects strength, not good intentions. The second sentence you must tell yourself every morning is this: the world respects strength, not good intentions. This is a truth many people spend their entire lives trying to avoid. From childhood, we are taught that being nice, being agreeable, and being harmless will somehow guarantee respect. But the world does not operate on moral fairy tales. It operates on power dynamics. Machiavelli observed this clearly. Leaders are not remembered because they had good intentions. They are remembered because they had the strength to shape outcomes. And strength does not only mean physical force, it means emotional discipline, psychological control, the ability to stay calm when others panic, the ability to move strategically while others react emotionally. Weak men believe their good intentions should protect them. Powerful men understand that respect is earned through capability, through competence, through presence, through the quiet confidence of a man who knows he can handle what comes his way. When you walk into a room, people do not measure your kindness first. They measure your stability, your control, your certainty, and if those qualities are missing, your intentions mean nothing. This is why every morning you must remind yourself, today I will cultivate strength, not arrogance, not cruelty, strength, the strength to control your reactions, the strength to think before you speak, the strength to walk away from chaos instead of becoming part of it, the strength to build your life patiently while others chase distractions, because strength creates gravity. People trust it, people follow it, people respect it, even when they cannot explain why. And when a man develops real strength, he no longer needs to demand attention. His presence speaks before he says a word. So tomorrow morning, before you begin your day, tell yourself, my intentions mean nothing without strength to support them. And then move through the world like a man who understands that truth. If you are serious about building that kind of strength, write this in the comments. I build power in silence. Because the next sentence you must tell yourself every morning is even more uncomfortable. It forces you to confront the nature of human behavior itself. And once you see it clearly, you will never look at people the same way again. Thing number 3, trust carefully, observe everything. Every morning you must remind yourself of a truth that most people only learn after they have already been betrayed, disappointed, or blindsided by reality. The sentence is simple, but it carries enormous power if you truly live by it. Trust carefully. Observe everything. The world is not as simple as it appears, and people are rarely as transparent as they pretend to be. Machiavelli understood this better than most thinkers in history. He studied rulers, generals, advisors, and enemies, and what he discovered was not flattering to human nature. He realized that people are often driven by self-interest before loyalty, advantage before friendship, and survival before morality. This does not mean people are evil. It means people are predictable if you understand what motivates them. And the man who refuses to accept this reality walks blindly through life, trusting words instead of studying behavior. Weak men believe what people say. Powerful men watch what people do. Most people rush into trust because it feels comfortable. It feels good to believe that those around us are honest, loyal, and predictable. But comfort is often the enemy of awareness. The truth is that character reveals itself slowly, over time, under pressure. Anyone can appear trustworthy when circumstances are easy. Anyone can appear loyal when there is nothing to lose. The real nature of a person reveals itself when the situation changes, when pressure arrives, when opportunities appear, when self-interest enters the equation. That is why observation is one of the most powerful skills a man can develop. When you observe carefully, you begin to notice the subtle signals that reveal people's true nature. You notice how someone treats people who cannot benefit them. You notice how someone behaves when they are under stress. You notice whether their actions match their words or whether their promises shift depending on the situation. These details seem small to most people, but they reveal enormous truths to the man who pays attention. Machiavelli once wrote that a wise leader must learn how to recognize deception without announcing that he sees it. That is the discipline of observation. You see more than you reveal. You understand more than you say. You notice patterns others ignore. And because of that awareness, you are far less likely to be manipulated. The mistake most people make is assuming that being observant means being paranoid. That is not what this principle is about. Paranoia weakens the mind because it replaces clarity with fear. Observation, however, strengthens the mind because it replaces ignorance with understanding. A paranoid man assumes everyone is an enemy. A strategic man simply studies people carefully before deciding where trust should be placed. Trust is not something that should be given cheaply. Trust is earned through consistency, time, and demonstrated character. A powerful man does not rush into loyalty or friendship simply because someone appears friendly. Instead, he allows people to reveal themselves gradually. He watches how they behave when there is nothing to gain. He watches how they behave when there is pressure, and he watches whether their character remains steady when circumstances change. This patience gives him a tremendous advantage, because the man who observes carefully is rarely surprised by betrayal. He sees the warning signs long before others do. He notices the small inconsistencies that most people overlook. He recognizes the subtle shifts in behavior that signal someone's priorities have changed. And because he notices these things early, he can adjust his strategy before the damage is done. This is one of the quiet powers that separate strong minds from naive ones. Naive men reveal everything about themselves immediately. They share their plans, their weaknesses, their ambitions with anyone who shows interest. They believe openness will protect them, but in reality, uncontrolled openness often becomes a vulnerability. Strategic men move differently. They listen more than they speak. They watch more than they reveal. They gather information quietly, patiently, carefully, because information is power. Every conversation contains clues about the person you are dealing with. Every reaction reveals something about their character. Every decision exposes their priorities. The man who trains himself to observe begins to see these patterns everywhere. He notices who becomes uncomfortable when accountability appears. He notices who only offers loyalty when there is something to gain. He notices who disappears when responsibility enters the room. And he also notices the rare individuals who remain consistent, disciplined, and trustworthy even when circumstances become difficult. These are the people worth respecting. These are the people worth building with. But you will only recognize them if you develop the patience to observe instead of rushing to trust. Another powerful advantage of observation is emotional control. When you watch carefully instead of reacting impulsively, you stop taking every situation personally. You begin to see behavior as information rather than insult. Someone's selfish decision no longer shocks you. Someone's manipulation no longer confuses you. Instead, you simply recognize it for what it is, a predictable expression of human nature. This emotional clarity protects your energy. You stop wasting time trying to change people who have already revealed their character. You stop chasing loyalty from those who have already demonstrated opportunism. You stop expecting stability from people who thrive on chaos. Instead, you move intelligently. You place trust where it is earned. You create distance where caution is required. And you maintain control over your decisions, rather than allowing emotions to make them for you. This is what Machiavellian awareness truly means. It does not mean manipulating everyone around you. It means understanding human nature clearly enough that you cannot easily be manipulated yourself. The man who sees clearly cannot be easily deceived. The man who listens carefully cannot be easily misled. And the man who observes everything eventually understands more about the world than the loudest voices in the room. Silence, in many cases, becomes his greatest advantage. Because while others are busy announcing their opinions, he is gathering information. While others rush to prove themselves, He is quietly studying the environment. While others are distracted by appearances, he is focused on patterns. And patterns reveal the truth that appearances try to hide. So every morning, before you step into the noise of the world, repeat this sentence to yourself. Trust carefully. Observe everything. Let that thought sharpen your awareness. Let it remind you that information is one of the greatest forms of power a man can possess. When you observe carefully, you begin to understand how people move, how they think, how they react when the stakes change. That awareness gives you the ability to anticipate behavior rather than simply react to it. And the man who can anticipate human behavior has already gained a strategic advantage over those who cannot. You will notice conversations shifting before others realize it. You will recognize motives before they are spoken. You will understand alliances before they become obvious. This level of awareness changes the way you move through the world. You become calmer, more deliberate, more precise. And that precision creates influence. Because people trust the man who sees clearly. They respect the man who reacts slowly and intelligently instead of impulsively. They recognize that he cannot easily be fooled. If this principle resonates with you, prove it to yourself. Write this phrase in the comments. I watch everything, not because I told you to, but because the man who trains himself to observe already understands something most people ignore. The loudest person in the room rarely holds the most power. The quiet observer does. And in the next section, we will confront another truth that many people try to avoid. A truth about enemies, obstacles, and the strange way they shape the strongest men. Because sometimes the forces that oppose you are the very things that build your power. Thing number 4, your enemies reveal your weakness. Most men fear enemies. Powerful men study them. Every morning, you must remind yourself of a sentence that will completely change the way you see conflict, criticism, and opposition. My enemies reveal my weaknesses. The average person spends enormous energy trying to avoid enemies. They want to be liked. They want approval. They want to move through life without friction. But that desire creates a dangerous illusion. Because the absence of enemies does not mean you are respected. Often, it simply means you are harmless. Machiavelli understood that conflict is not always a threat. Sometimes it is a mirror. Sometimes it exposes the vulnerabilities you refuse to see in yourself. Every opponent, every critic, every rival carries information about you. Information you can either ignore or use to become stronger. Weak men react emotionally to opposition. They become defensive, angry, and distracted. They try to silence criticism rather than understand it. They focus on proving others wrong instead of improving themselves. But powerful men approach opposition differently. They treat it like intelligence on a battlefield. When someone challenges you, pay attention, not to the insult, to the signal behind it. Because somewhere inside that conflict is a piece of information about your current position. Maybe someone is challenging you because they sense hesitation. Maybe they sense insecurity. Maybe they see an opening you didn't realize existed. Enemies often reveal weaknesses faster than friends ever will, because enemies have no reason to protect your ego. Friends comfort you. Enemies expose you. And exposure, if you have the discipline to face it honestly, becomes one of the fastest paths to growth. Think about the greatest strategists in history. They did not ignore their enemies. They studied them obsessively. They analyzed their strengths, their tactics, their habits, their psychology. They asked one question repeatedly: why does my opponent believe they can defeat me? That question alone reveals enormous insight, because an enemy only attacks when they believe an opportunity exists. Somewhere in your strategy, your behavior, or your reputation, there is a signal that tells them you are vulnerable. And if you are intelligent enough to identify that signal, you can remove it. You can eliminate the weakness before it becomes a real threat. This is the mindset of a strategic man. Instead of fearing opposition, he extracts information from it. Instead of reacting emotionally, he analyzes. Instead of complaining about enemies, he uses them to refine his strength. But this requires a level of emotional discipline that most people never develop. Because the ego hates criticism. The ego hates opposition. The ego wants to believe it is already perfect. Yet perfection is an illusion that weakens a man. The moment you believe you cannot be improved is the moment you stop evolving. And the moment you stop evolving, someone else begins to surpass you. That is why enemies are sometimes more valuable than admirers. Admirers applaud what you already are. Enemies force you to become something better. Machiavelli observed that rulers who ignored opposition often collapsed because they believed their own image of power instead of studying the threats around them. They surrounded themselves with flattering voices and silenced criticism, and in doing so they blinded themselves to the dangers that were slowly approaching. A wise man does the opposite. He listens carefully when opposition appears. He asks himself uncomfortable questions. Why did this conflict arise? What weakness might have invited this challenge? Is there something in my strategy that needs improvement? These questions transform opposition from a threat into an advantage, because every time you eliminate a weakness, you become harder to challenge. Every time you refine your discipline, you become more difficult to defeat. Every time you confront a flaw honestly, you gain control over it instead of allowing it to control you. This is how power grows, quietly, strategically, through constant refinement. And here is another truth many people refuse to accept. If you are doing something meaningful with your life, you will eventually create enemies. Not because you are cruel, not because you are unfair, but because progress attracts resistance. When you grow stronger, more focused, more independent, it disrupts the expectations of people around you. Some will respect it, others will resent it. Some will admire your discipline, others will interpret your independence as arrogance. This is normal. The moment you begin rising above average behavior, you will stand out. And standing out inevitably creates tension with those who prefer comfort over growth. The worst mistake you can make at this point is trying to shrink yourself to avoid conflict. Many men sabotage their own power because they are afraid of being disliked. They soften their opinions. They hide their ambition. They dilute their discipline. All because they want to maintain universal approval. But Machiavelli understood something crucial. A man who tries to please everyone eventually loses respect from everyone. Respect does not come from universal approval. Respect comes from clarity, strength, and consistency. And sometimes that strength will create opposition. That opposition is not always a sign that you are doing something wrong. Sometimes it is simply proof that you are no longer easy to control. The key is learning to separate useful criticism from meaningless noise. Not every enemy carries wisdom. Some people oppose you simply because your growth threatens their comfort. But even in those situations, there is information available. Their reaction reveals something about the environment you are operating in. It tells you who is supportive, who is competitive, and who is quietly waiting for you to fail. This awareness allows you to move strategically. You learn who to trust with your plans. You learn who to keep at a distance. And you learn who should never have access to your vulnerabilities. The strategic man does not waste energy hating his enemies. Hatred clouds judgment. Instead, he watches them. He studies their behavior. He listens to the signals hidden within their attacks. And he strengthens himself accordingly. Over time, something interesting begins to happen. The weaknesses your enemies once noticed begin to disappear. Your discipline becomes stronger. Your reactions become calmer. Your decisions become more precise. And eventually the people who once believed they could challenge you begin to reconsider. Because the man who constantly learns from opposition becomes extremely difficult to defeat. He adapts faster. He anticipates threats earlier. He improves continuously while others remain stagnant. This is the quiet transformation that turns ordinary individuals into formidable ones. And it begins with a simple morning reminder. Before you start your day, look at yourself honestly and repeat this sentence: "My enemies reveal my weaknesses." Not as a complaint, as a strategy. Because once you adopt this mindset, opposition stops being something you fear. It becomes something you analyze, something you learn from, something that sharpens your awareness and strengthens your discipline. And over time, the very people who once tried to challenge you unknowingly contribute to your growth. They push you to improve. They push you to refine your strategy. They push you to remove weaknesses you might otherwise ignore. This is the paradox of power. Sometimes the people who oppose you become the architects of your strength. If this perspective resonates with you, prove it to yourself. Write this phrase in the comments: "My enemies sharpen my power." Because the next sentence you must tell yourself every morning might be the most important of them all. It is the principle that determines whether your life will be controlled by circumstances or by your own discipline. Thing number 5, discipline is greater than motivation. Let me start this section with a truth most people spend their entire lives misunderstanding. Motivation is fragile, but discipline is power. Every morning, you must remind yourself of a sentence that separates the men who build empires from the men who build excuses. The sentence is simple, but if you live by it, it will transform the way you approach every challenge in your life. Discipline is greater than motivation. Motivation feels good. It feels exciting. It arrives in emotional bursts that make you believe you can conquer the world overnight. But motivation is unreliable. It fades when discomfort appears. It disappears when the work becomes repetitive. It vanishes when results take longer than expected. Discipline, however, does not care about mood. Discipline does not wait for inspiration. Discipline acts regardless of how you feel. And that is why disciplined men eventually surpass motivated men every single time. Machiavelli understood that power does not belong to those who feel strong occasionally. Power belongs to those who behave consistently. A leader who only acts when he feels inspired will eventually collapse under pressure. A strategist who only works when he feels energized will never outlast his competitors. Real power comes from repetition, from routine, from the ability to do the necessary work even when your mind searches desperately for excuses to avoid it. Most people underestimate how dangerous discipline truly is. They believe discipline is boring, rigid, and restrictive. But in reality, discipline is freedom in its most powerful form. It frees you from the chaos of impulse. It frees you from the weakness of procrastination. It frees you from the emotional storms that control the lives of undisciplined men. When a man develops discipline, he no longer negotiates with his comfort. He no longer debates with his laziness. He no longer waits for the perfect mood or the perfect moment. He simply moves. Weak men rely on motivation because it allows them to remain passive when motivation disappears. They say things like, "I'll start tomorrow," or "I just don't feel inspired today." But the disciplined man understands something different. He understands that greatness is rarely created in moments of excitement. It is created in long stretches of quiet effort that nobody sees. Think about the men who dominate in any field: business, leadership, strategy, or physical mastery. Their power is not built in dramatic bursts of effort. It is built in consistent, controlled repetition. Day after day, week after week, year after year. While others are waiting for inspiration, they are executing a routine. This is why discipline terrifies average people. Because discipline exposes how unnecessary most excuses truly are. It reveals that progress is not complicated, it is simply uncomfortable, and most people spend their lives avoiding discomfort. They avoid the early mornings. They avoid the hard conversations. They avoid the difficult decisions. They avoid the habits that slowly build strength. Instead, they search for shortcuts, easier paths, quicker rewards, effortless success. But shortcuts create fragile results. Anything built quickly can collapse quickly. Discipline builds something different. It builds stability. When you train yourself to act with discipline every day, you develop a level of internal control that most people never experience. Your actions stop being controlled by emotions. Your habits stop being controlled by mood. Your progress stops being controlled by temporary motivation. Instead, your life becomes structured around intentional behavior. You wake up and execute your routine whether you feel excited or tired. You work on your goals whether the results appear quickly or slowly. You train your body and sharpen your mind whether anyone notices or not. And over time, this quiet consistency produces something remarkable. While others move in emotional waves, bursts of action followed by long periods of inactivity, you move steadily forward. You advance a small distance every single day. One step, then another, then another. And eventually, the distance between you and everyone who relies on motivation becomes enormous. Because they started with enthusiasm, but you continued with discipline. Machiavelli often wrote about the relationship between fortune and preparation. Fortune, he argued, favors those who are ready when opportunity arrives. But readiness does not appear suddenly. Readiness is built through discipline. The disciplined man is always preparing. He is preparing his mind to think clearly under pressure. He is preparing his body to endure discomfort. He is preparing his habits to support long-term strategy rather than short-term emotion. So when opportunity appears, he does not panic. He does not hesitate. He is already ready. This is one of the most powerful advantages discipline creates. It turns preparation into a permanent state. While others scramble to react, you are already positioned to act. But there is another layer to discipline that most people never understand. Discipline is not only about controlling your actions. It is also about controlling your attention. In the modern world, attention has become one of the most valuable resources a man possesses. Every day, thousands of distractions compete for your focus. Notifications, entertainment, endless information, endless opinions. Most people surrender their attention without realizing it. They wake up and immediately consume noise. They scroll through distractions before they even begin their day. They allow their mind to be filled with random information that has nothing to do with their goals. The disciplined man moves differently. He protects his attention. He decides what deserves his focus and what does not. He treats his time and mental energy as strategic assets. Because he understands a simple truth: where attention goes, power follows. If your attention is scattered, your power becomes scattered. If your attention is controlled, your power becomes concentrated. This is why disciplined individuals often appear calm and focused even in chaotic environments. Their mind is not jumping from one distraction to another. Their attention is directed toward what truly matters. And this clarity multiplies their effectiveness. Another powerful benefit of discipline is the confidence it creates. Not the loud, fragile confidence that depends on approval from others, but a quiet, unshakable confidence built from evidence. Every time you complete a task you promised yourself you would do, you strengthen your trust in your own character. Every time you resist a distraction that once controlled you, you reinforce your self-mastery. Every time you push through discomfort instead of retreating from it, you remind yourself that you are stronger than your impulses. Over time, these small victories accumulate. They create a deep internal certainty. You no longer need external validation to feel powerful. You know what you are capable of because you have proven it to yourself repeatedly. This is the confidence discipline creates, and it is far more stable than the confidence created by temporary success. Success can disappear. Praise can disappear. But discipline stays with you. And as long as discipline remains, you always have the ability to rebuild anything that is lost. This is why disciplined men are rarely destroyed by failure. They may lose a battle, but they never lose their ability to fight again. Because their power does not depend on circumstances, it depends on habits. And habits can always be executed again. So every morning, before the world begins testing your focus and your resolve, repeat this sentence to yourself: discipline is greater than motivation. Let it remind you that your mood does not control your actions. Let it remind you that your progress depends on consistency, not excitement. Let it remind you that power grows through repetition, patience, and controlled effort. If this principle resonates with you, prove it to yourself. Write this phrase in the comments: I move with discipline, not emotion. Because in the next section, we are going to bring these principles together and reveal the final transformation that occurs when a man truly lives by them. The transformation that turns an ordinary life into a strategic one. Most men believe power is loud. They imagine dominance as something dramatic, commanding attention, speaking the most, proving themselves in every room they enter. But the deeper truth is this: real power often moves in silence, and every morning you must remind yourself of a sentence that most people will never understand until it is far too late. Silence is a strategic weapon. The modern world rewards noise. Everyone is encouraged to share every opinion, reveal every plan, broadcast every success, and defend every action publicly. Social platforms, conversations, and even workplaces push people to constantly prove themselves through words. But Machiavelli observed something different about powerful individuals. The most effective leaders and strategists rarely revealed everything they knew or intended to do. They understood that information, once released, can never be taken back. Weak men reveal everything. Powerful men reveal only what is necessary. This discipline creates an enormous strategic advantage. When you speak less, you learn more. When you reveal less, you control more. When others cannot easily predict your intentions, they cannot easily manipulate or undermine your strategy. Silence allows you to observe without interference. It allows you to study people, patterns, and situations without exposing your own vulnerabilities. Think about how often people sabotage themselves simply by speaking too much. They reveal their ambitions to people who secretly hope they fail. They expose their insecurities to people who later use those weaknesses against them. They announce their plans before they have the discipline to execute them. This is why many powerful men develop a habit of restraint, not secrecy driven by fear, but restraint guided by strategy. Because once you understand the dynamics of power, you realize something important. The more people know about your intentions, the more opportunities they have to influence or interfere with them. Silence removes those opportunities. It forces others to reveal more about themselves, while you reveal less about yourself. In any conversation, the person who speaks the most is often the one giving away the most information. They reveal their emotions, their priorities, their insecurities, their expectations. Meanwhile, the person who listens carefully gathers all of that information without exposing their own position. That is power. Machiavelli once emphasized that wise rulers should appear open while carefully controlling what they truly reveal. appearance and reality are not always the same thing in the world of influence. A man can appear calm, agreeable, and cooperative, while quietly maintaining complete control over his strategy. This requires emotional discipline. Because the ego constantly pushes you to speak. The ego wants recognition. The ego wants validation. The ego wants others to know how capable you are. But the strategic man understands something deeper. He does not need constant recognition. His focus is not on proving himself in every conversation. His focus is on building results that speak louder than words. Silence allows him to concentrate on that process. It protects his attention. It prevents unnecessary conflict. And it allows him to move through environments without drawing unnecessary resistance. Another advantage of silence is psychological influence. People tend to reveal more when they feel they are not being challenged. When someone listens calmly without interrupting, others often feel encouraged to keep talking. They begin sharing details they might otherwise keep hidden. They reveal opinions, assumptions, and plans simply because they feel comfortable filling the silence. This creates a powerful informational advantage. While others talk freely, you gather insight into their thinking. You learn what motivates them. You learn what they fear. You learn what they want. And this understanding allows you to navigate interactions far more effectively. Silence also protects you from emotional traps. Many conflicts escalate because people react impulsively to words. Someone insults them, challenges them, or provokes them, and they immediately respond with anger. But when you train yourself to pause before reacting, you gain control over the situation. The moment you stop reacting emotionally, you change the entire dynamic of the interaction. The person attempting to provoke you loses their leverage. Because provocation only works when the target responds emotionally. Silence removes that reaction. It creates space for clarity. It allows you to decide whether a response is even necessary. Often the most powerful response is no response at all. When someone attempts to pull you into meaningless conflict and you remain calm and silent, their strategy collapses. They expected anger, defense, or explanation. Instead, they encounter composure. And composure is intimidating. It signals control. It signals awareness. It signals that you cannot easily be manipulated. This is why many powerful individuals cultivate the ability to remain silent under pressure. They do not rush to defend themselves. They do not rush to argue every accusation. They allow situations to unfold before deciding whether intervention is required. Because reacting immediately often reveals insecurity. Strategic patience reveals confidence. Another reason silence is powerful is because it preserves mystery. In a world where everyone reveals everything about themselves, the individual who maintains a level of mystery naturally commands more attention. People become curious. They wonder what you are thinking, what you are planning, what you truly believe. This curiosity creates influence. People pay closer attention to those they cannot easily predict. But when someone constantly explains themselves, constantly justifies their actions, constantly broadcasts their intentions, they remove that mystery. They become transparent, and transparency can become vulnerability when used carelessly. This does not mean you should never speak or share ideas. Communication is essential for leadership and cooperation. But communication should be intentional, not impulsive. Speak when it serves a purpose. Speak when clarity is required. Speak when leadership demands direction. But avoid speaking simply to fill silence. Because unnecessary words often dilute authority. Every sentence you speak should carry weight. Every statement should be deliberate. Every explanation should be strategic. When you train yourself to speak with this level of intention, people begin to listen more carefully when you do speak, because they recognize that your words are not random. They are measured. They are thoughtful. They are purposeful. And that transforms the way others perceive you. Another hidden benefit of silence is internal clarity. When you constantly talk, your mind becomes scattered. You react to every stimulus, every conversation, every opinion around you. But when you develop the habit of quiet reflection, your thoughts become sharper. You begin analyzing situations more deeply. You notice patterns more clearly. You develop strategic patience. Silence becomes a space where intelligence grows. Many of the greatest decisions in history were not made in moments of chaos. They were made in moments of quiet thinking, where leaders allowed themselves the time to examine consequences before acting. This is another reason disciplined men protect periods of silence in their daily lives. Silence is where strategy is built. Silence is where emotional reactions are replaced by calculated decisions. Silence is where clarity replaces confusion. So every morning, before stepping into the noise of the world, remind yourself of this sentence: silence is a strategic weapon. Let it remind you that power does not require constant explanation. Let it remind you that observation often reveals more than argument. Let it remind you that restraint creates influence. When you speak less, people listen more carefully. When you reveal less, people pay closer attention. When you react less, people realize they cannot easily control you. This quiet control transforms the way you move through the world. You become calmer in conflict, more deliberate in conversation, more focused in your strategy. And over time, people begin to sense that your silence is not weakness. It is awareness. It is discipline. It is power held under control. If this principle resonates with you, write this phrase in the comments: "My silence is my strength." Because in the next section, we will uncover another powerful truth about influence, a principle that explains why some men command respect the moment they enter a room, while others struggle to be taken seriously at all. And once you understand it, you will begin shaping the way the world sees you before you even say a word. Before a man speaks, before he proves anything, before he explains his intentions, the room has already made a judgment about him. This is a truth most people ignore, but it silently shapes every interaction they will ever have. The world reads presence long before it listens to words. That is why every morning you must remind yourself of a sentence that few people truly understand. Power is a presence. You have seen it before. A man walks into a room and something changes. The energy shifts. Conversations pause for a moment. People look up without fully realizing why. No loud announcement. No dramatic display. Just presence. And then you see the opposite. Someone else enters the same room, and nothing happens. No attention. No gravity. No awareness that someone new has arrived. The difference between those two men is not always status, wealth, or physical strength. The difference is something more subtle and far more powerful. It is internal authority, the quiet certainty a man carries within himself. Machiavelli understood this principle when observing leaders and rulers. Influence does not begin with commands. It begins with perception. People respond to what they sense before they respond to what they hear, and perception is shaped by presence. Weak men chase validation. They try to prove their worth in every conversation. They talk too much, laugh too loudly, and reveal their insecurity through constant explanation. Their energy asks for approval. Powerful men move differently. Their energy does not ask. It declares, not through arrogance or aggression, but through control. Their movements are deliberate. Their words are measured. Their attention is focused. They are comfortable in silence because they do not feel the need to fill every moment with noise. That calm certainty creates gravity, and gravity attracts respect. Presence begins with internal discipline. The way you carry yourself is a direct reflection of the way you carry your mind. If your thoughts are chaotic, your behavior will appear restless. If your emotions are unstable, your reactions will appear unpredictable. But when your mind becomes disciplined, your external presence begins to change. You move slower, not out of laziness, but out of control. You speak less, not because you lack ideas, but because you choose your words carefully. You react less, not because you are passive, but because you understand that composure is power. People sense this difference even if they cannot explain it. They feel it in your posture. They feel it in your tone of voice. They feel it in the calm way you handle pressure. And this feeling shapes their perception of you. Most people underestimate how much perception influences reality. Humans constantly evaluate one another for signals of confidence, stability, and authority. These signals often determine who receives respect, who receives opportunity, and who is ignored. This does not mean the world is fair, but it does mean awareness gives you an advantage. Because once you understand that presence shapes perception, you can begin refining the signals you send to the world. One of the strongest signals is composure. When chaos appears, most people react immediately. Their voice rises, their emotions spill into their words, their decisions become rushed and reactive. But the man who maintains composure under pressure immediately separates himself from the crowd. People begin to look toward him for direction, not because he demanded authority, but because his calm behavior suggests control. Machiavelli often observed that leaders who remained steady during crises naturally attracted loyalty. People follow stability. In uncertain environments, they instinctively search for individuals who appear grounded, and composure creates that image of stability. Another signal of presence is decisiveness. Indecision weakens perception faster than almost anything else. When a man constantly hesitates, constantly changes direction, constantly second-guesses himself, people begin to lose confidence in his leadership. But decisiveness sends a different message. It signals clarity. It signals responsibility. It signals a willingness to carry the consequences of a decision rather than avoiding them. This does not mean every decision must be perfect. No one has perfect foresight, but decisive individuals create momentum, and momentum often matters more than perfection. Presence also comes from self-respect. How you treat yourself becomes the standard others follow when dealing with you. If you tolerate disrespect, manipulation, or constant boundary violations, people will eventually assume those behaviors are acceptable. But when you maintain strong boundaries, people recognize that your standards are not negotiable. This does not require aggression. In fact, the strongest boundaries are often enforced calmly. A simple refusal, a quiet correction, a controlled response. These actions communicate far more authority than loud confrontation. Another powerful element of presence is attention. When you give someone your full attention, you create an unusual experience in a distracted world. Most people are constantly dividing their focus between multiple thoughts, devices, and conversations. But when someone feels genuinely seen and heard, it creates a strong impression. And the man who controls his attention controls the quality of his interactions. He listens carefully. He observes details. He responds thoughtfully. This focused engagement often makes people feel respected, which strengthens influence naturally. But presence is not only about how you interact with others. It is also about how you carry yourself when no one is watching. Your habits shape your identity. If your daily actions reflect discipline, consistency, and self-control, those qualities gradually become part of your character, and character eventually becomes visible in the way you move through the world. Confidence built on discipline feels different from confidence built on ego. Ego requires constant reinforcement. It needs praise. It needs recognition. It needs others to confirm its importance. But confidence built on discipline comes from evidence. You know the habits you have maintained. You know the challenges you have endured. You know the promises you have kept to yourself. And this internal evidence creates a quiet certainty that cannot easily be shaken. This certainty becomes visible in your presence. You do not need to dominate every conversation. You do not need to compete for attention. You do not need to prove yourself repeatedly. Your composure speaks before your words ever do. And over time, people begin to associate your presence with reliability. They see you as someone who remains steady when others panic, someone who listens when others interrupt, someone who acts deliberately instead of impulsively. This perception gradually turns into influence. Because influence is rarely forced, it is recognized. When people consistently observe stability, discipline, and clarity in your behavior, they begin to trust your judgment. And trust becomes the foundation of leadership. So every morning, before you step into the world, remind yourself of this truth. Power is a presence. Let that sentence guide the way you carry yourself throughout the day. Walk with intention. Speak with purpose. Listen with focus. Respond with composure. And remember that the strongest signals of authority are often the quietest ones. If this idea resonates with you, write this phrase in the comments. My presence commands respect. Because in the next section, we will uncover the final transformation, the moment when these principles stop being ideas and start becoming the way you live your life every single day. At some point, if you repeat these truths every morning, something inside you begins to change. Not suddenly, not dramatically, but quietly, steadily, like steel being forged under pressure. The transformation does not announce itself. There is no moment where you wake up and suddenly feel powerful. Instead, you begin to notice something else. The things that once controlled you start losing their power. The opinions of others stop shaking your confidence. Distractions stop pulling your focus in every direction. Fear stops dictating your decisions. And slowly, almost without realizing it, you begin to move through the world differently. Because the 5 sentences you tell yourself every morning are not just words, they are mental conditioning. They reshape the way you interpret reality. They remind you of something most people forget. The world is not conquered by emotion. It is navigated by discipline. Think about the man you used to be before these ideas entered your mind. Maybe you reacted quickly to criticism. Maybe you trusted too easily. Maybe you waited for motivation to appear before taking action. Maybe you tried to please everyone around you, hoping approval would protect you. But the man who lives by these principles slowly abandons those habits. He wakes up remembering that no one is coming, so he takes responsibility for his direction. He remembers that strength commands respect, so he sharpens his discipline instead of chasing approval. He remembers to observe everything, so he stops being naive about human nature. He understands that enemies reveal weaknesses, so he studies conflict instead of fearing it. And he reminds himself that discipline is greater than motivation, so he continues moving forward even when enthusiasm disappears. These reminders slowly change the architecture of your mind. Where there was once hesitation, there is now clarity. Where there was once emotional reaction, there is now controlled response. Where there was once dependence on external validation, there is now internal authority. This is the real transformation. It is not about becoming louder or more aggressive. It is about becoming harder to control. The world loses leverage over you when your discipline becomes stronger than your impulses. When you are no longer desperate for approval, manipulation becomes difficult. When you no longer panic in chaos, pressure becomes ineffective. And this is what makes a man untouchable. Not arrogance, not intimidation. Control. Control over his attention,